Last week we marveled at how we are grafted, plugged into the vine of Jesus, and He's connected to the Father, and everything that's the Father's and everything that's Jesus is ours, and we bear fruit. We just can't help it. It just comes. That's God's plan for us, connected to the vine. This week we continue in John 15, and we talk about how we're connected by love. That's become more of a debated word than a clear, wonderful word. All of us come up with different thoughts when it comes to love. It can be defined a lot of different ways today, and so it's important that we get our definition from Jesus. What is love, anyways? What is true love? What does that look like? I want it, if I even know what it is. Well, is this love? Is this love that there's this husband and wife in their 20s, and the wife has a horrible bike accident and is paralyzed from the waist down, and the husband, of course, for the first while, takes care of her, sits by her in the hospital, helps her with rehab, walks by her side, she leans on him, even though she can't use the bottom half of her body. But then not just for weeks and months, for years and years, he will put his eyes or hands on no other woman. He will love her and carry out his vows, even though everything has changed and it's not like it was when they first got married. Romance has changed. She can't walk. He pushes her everywhere. But is that love? I think we can agree on that example of love. That's commitment, even though it's hard. Even though you probably don't always feel like waking up and taking care of somebody like that every single day. It gets grueling sometimes. Is it love that these foster parents get this little child with fetal alcohol syndrome, and wasn't everything they envisioned with being foster parents, but their heart becomes attached. They take him to doctors and to counselors' appointments. And even though he grows up and starts telling them, I don't love you, I hate you, you don't love me, all those lies, right? He doesn't know quite how to love. His brain is so damaged. He's got to learn it from them. And yet they adopt him and they stick with him the rest of his life. Is that not love? I think we can agree that's love. If we agree these are two examples of love, love is committed, love is consistent, love is painful, love comes with a cost. It's not just take, what's in it for me? It's give. And love is action-oriented, that husband making that daily choice to turn his eyes away from other women and put his eyes on that woman he made his vows to. Love is a daily choice for those parents to love that child, even if he tries to run away and doesn't reciprocate their love back at them. This is love. I think we can agree on these examples. If we can agree on these examples, then why can it be so hard for us to love? I needed this sermon as much as you do. It can be so hard to love when we don't get appreciation, when it's not turned back to us, when it just feels like you give and you're empty, and it hurts. And you feel like you're bleeding out sometimes when you're really loving like Jesus loved. It can be hard to love those we've made a vow to, hard to love our own flesh and blood. Isn't it hardest to love those closest to us because we know so much about them? We can come up with a whole list of reasons why they're not lovable or why they don't deserve our love, right? You know what I'm talking about. Why can it be so hard to love even people within our own church who are as forgiven and loved by God as we are, right? In John 15, Jesus continues that vine and the branches discussion, and he's going to get into how we're connected by his love, which helps us to love even when it's hard to love, even when we don't feel like loving, even when loving means that we don't win and we don't get anything, at least immediately, for what we're giving out. Even when choosing to love means we're not always happy. John 15. As the Father has loved me, so also I have loved you. Remain in my love. If you hold on to my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I've held on to my Father's commands and remain in his love. I've told you these things so that my joy would continue to be in you and that your joy would be complete. This is my command. Love one another as I've loved you. No one has greater love than this, that someone lays down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you continue to do the things I instruct you. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know what his master is doing. But I've called you friends, because everything that I heard from my Father I've made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will endure, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask in my name. These things I am instructing you so that you love one another. Love connects. We saw that in the examples with the foster parents. Even though that child doesn't know how to be connected, love connects that child to the parents. Love connects that husband to the wife. And we're going to talk about 5 ways that Jesus defines love and shows us what love really is and fleshes out kind of that word that can be sort of turned into this touchy-feely, ooey-gooey, just feelings word. There's way more to it than that, and Jesus is going to fill it up with meaning for us. First of all, we are connected by obedience. Love means obedience. And we see that with Jesus and his Father. If you hold on to my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have held on to my Father's commands and remain in his love. Jesus always remembered those eternal lessons that his Father had taught them. After all, they had seen the entire world together. They traveled it all because they made it all, right? They knew each other inside and out. They knew what made each other tick. And when the Father sent Jesus to earth, into this earth of troubles and sorrows, Jesus brought love from the Father here. He brought all those lessons with him here. What it means to be loved and approved of and accepted and safe and secure. He brought that here. And while he was here, he obeyed the Father, even when it meant people would not like him. Even when it meant somewhat heated discussions with his adversaries, or that people would gang up against him and plot against him, he obeyed his Father, no matter what the outcome was. So if obedience connects, if obedience is a form of love, if obedience shows love, parents sometimes say, people tell me, my kids, when they're out in the world, people say, your kids are so well behaved, they're so angelic, and you're like, if you'd only see them at home. But I always remind parents, the fact that they're obeying out in the world is a sign that your hard-fought lessons in the home are actually going somewhere, right? It's a sign that child's obedience means they love you, and even though they don't say it in the moment when you're disciplining them, they need that discipline and guidance. They need those rules. They need those hard talks. That is love. Obedience is love. So if obedience is love, how are we doing? How are we doing with that? Ouch. Ouch. I looked at just one commandment to think, how am I doing with this? How are the people of God doing with this? I went to the 8th commandment. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Well, I don't say anything false about anybody else. I tell it like it is. But if we really meditate on that, how often is our version of the story not really totally the whole story? It's what we want to believe. It's what we want other people to hear and think about that person, because sometimes are we not looking for people to join our side and believe us and validate us, right? How easy is it to inflate the story about the other person, and all of a sudden that testimony is no longer true. It's inflated. How easy it is to dramatize it. How are we doing with the 8th commandment? How are we doing with obedience and with love for our neighbor and love for God to obey his commands? Why does God care so much about this command? Because he cares about truth. And he cares about everybody's reputation. And he instructs us that there is one way. There is one way only. When you are bothered by somebody else, when somebody else offends you, the gut instinct way to deal with that is to pick up that offense and carry it with you and vomit it onto other people. Is that love? Is that obedience? And then they pick up the offense too, and the vomit you've put on them about that other person. You know how it works. And that person's reputation's ruined, and it takes just one story or one little word to ruin somebody's reputation and a whole lifetime to rebuild it. He says there's one way. You need to suck it up and go to that person and talk it out and give true testimony about here's how I'm feeling, here's what I'm noticing, here's what I'm observing, here's what I'm bothered by. And if I can't do that to that person, I need to take that to God and say, God, I don't know how to do this. This is bothering me, but please don't let me become a pawn of Satan and go vomit about this person all over the place. How are we doing with the 8th commandment? Ouch. 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 This is love. That God wouldn't let us continue doing this to each other, ripping and tearing at each other, tearing each other down instead of building each other up. This is love, that God would confront us on this. And this, my friends, is love, that Jesus does not leave us in the pain and in the guilt. This is just one commandment, right? And how are we feeling after looking at this one commandment? This, my friends, is love. This is why we need Jesus, because Jesus obeyed this commandment. He was the beautiful flower, the perfect flower, right? No flaws, no corruptions, no ugliness about him. Remember, he went and talked to people, even when it would mean it would be a hard conversation, and they may not like him anymore, because he cared about truth, and he cared about that person so much, and he cared about obeying his Father. How did he obey despite what other people would do back to him? I mean, how do you do that? The power didn't come from him. The power to love didn't come from him. It came from his Father. He knew that no matter what other people thought about him, no matter how that conversation would turn out, if the person would accept it and things would get better or not, his Father would still love him. Jesus obeyed where you and I haven't. Jesus obeyed, so even though you and I haven't, we can still be loved by the Father and connected to the Father. We are loved by the Father, not because of what we've done or how well we've kept the 8th commandment or how together we have our lives. We are loved by the Father because Jesus kept his life together. If we really believe this, we'll be connected to Jesus, and we will find the strength and the power to love even when it's hard, even when it's not convenient. Love also connects us because joy connects us. Joy connects us. How happy are you with your life right now? How happy are you with your job, your spouse, your nation? If that's solely where we get our joy from, we have a problem. We're in for a long, long life. If we're looking for any of those things to be our sources of joy, are unending, constant sources of joy. Even the best people in our lives will let us down, and they will give us reason at times to be unhappy and unjoyful. If we have a joy problem, a joy deficit, it's probably because we're looking to the wrong sources for that joy. And our next instinct is maybe to try and manufacture some joy. I need to make a change in my life. I need to change one of these situations, and maybe, I'm a mathematician. X plus Z equals Y. If I change this, then this will be the outcome. That's how it works. That's what all the self-help books say. So I try to manufacture joy. Maybe I'll renovate the house, change of scenery, and I'll take on way too much debt that I can't pay off just to find some joy. I'll leave a relationship because that will make me happy. Or I'll work too many hours to fix my financial problems, and in the process, I will withdraw love from the people who need it most. I'm trying to get my joy from the wrong things in the wrong places. So what do we do when we're feeling like this? And I get here. I get here all the time, just like you do. Let's go to the root of our joy problem. The root of our joy problem. Even in the darkest dungeons, the light of Jesus shines there too. Even in the worst of storms, the anchor of Jesus holds us secure. Has Jesus left us? This last year, when we were separated and the world was changing around us and everything was canceled and we didn't like the decisions, has Jesus left us? No, he was still with you no matter where you were. Whether you were watching it on TV or here or took a break from Jesus for a time, Jesus didn't leave you, even if you've left him. Where do you find Jesus? He's present in the preaching of his word. He dwells in you like a happy traveler. I think of an Airbnb and that happy traveler lounging in the Airbnb, playing cards, and getting a restful night of sleep. Jesus is dwelling in you like that right now, and he gives you rest, he gives you peace, he gives you joy. Even when the circumstances in the world and the circumstances in your life dry up and do not, and you have a joy deficit. Is God going to damn you? Even if everything falls apart, you lose your job, this country changes, is God going to damn you and condemn you? No. Because Jesus had made peace. He was condemned for you on the cross. And I invite you to pray with me. Restore my joy, Jesus. I don't know how to do it myself. I can't find it myself. Restore my joy. Be my fount of joy, my source of joy, my only joy above all else. Give me the kind of joy this world cannot. This is the only way I can think of. I often see people in tragedies, horrible, horrible things, lifelong chronic pain, miscarriages, and on and on. Horrible things. They find each other in the midst of that tragedy, and they give each other joy from the peace they have from God. I can't explain how that works. Nothing else heals and ministers to people and soothes people like the joy found in Jesus, no matter what the situation is. Number 3, we are connected by sacrifice. Jesus says, "This is my command, love one another as I've loved you. No one has greater love than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends." When we're lacking joy or motivation to obey, right? Obedience is hard. Joy is hard. We want those things, more of them. When we're lacking them, reflecting on Jesus' sacrifice can restore our joy and our motivation to obey. Tell me, were we Jesus' friends when he gave his life for us? What does the Bible say about that? When Jesus gave his life for us, we were his enemies. He had a long list of reasons why we didn't deserve God's love, but he did it anyways and gave his life anyways. We were unlovable, undeserving, unworthy of that sacrifice, but that's love. That he died for the unworthy, undeserving, unlovable. We only considered that one commandment and saw how much we've failed. And yet he sacrificed himself. Anyways, he made moves of friendship towards us before we made any move towards him. That is sacrifice, and that is love. If that doesn't motivate us to obey God and have some joy, nothing will. Because we won't find reasons. I haven't found them yet. What are the reasons to love the unlovable? What are the reasons to love those who don't love us back or to love those who fail us? I haven't found human reasons to do it. Unless you're looking for praise from other people or a pat on the back from other people, which that lasts a minute, right? The only reason is because Christ has sacrificed himself for you at your most dire moment. Love is not a contract. Love is not a 50-50. I'll go halfway, you go halfway. Love goes all in. Love is not what's in it for me. It's about what's in it for them. What do they need? Love is not about mine. Love is about ours. We need to change our vocabulary from I to we. Love sacrifices regardless of what it gets in return. Love sacrifices even when it will lose everything, even when it will hurt like stepping on a hornet's nest. I want to love like Jesus loves. This is a lifelong pursuit, worthy of a lifetime of study and reflection on Jesus' sacrifice, to love even a little bit like Jesus has loved us. Number 4, we're connected by knowledge. I no longer call you servants, because a servant doesn't know what his master is doing. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you to go and bear fruit that will endure, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask in my name. Jesus shows us that connection with him is about more than fuzzy-wuzzy feelings. Look, I'm not saying feelings don't matter, but sometimes do we expect feelings to come without any effort being put in? Do we expect feelings to just come without action in relationships? Without studying each other's needs and wants and learning how to meet those needs and wants, and then perhaps the feelings will come after we've actually loved and put action and sacrifice? To do what Jesus commands, to show love for our neighbor, we need to actually know what he commands. Love means knowledge. Knowledge connects us. Knowledge of Jesus means we actually know the commandments of the Bible and that they're unchanging, regardless of what our current society says about them. Knowledge about Jesus means we actually know his plan of salvation for the human race and our part in it. Knowledge of Jesus means we dust off those catechisms and those songbooks and those Bible story books, and we read them with our kids before bed or our grandkids when they come to visit. Finally, love connects because action connects. These things I'm instructing you so that you love one another. Whenever you hear that word in the Bible, love, I would invite you to think of it, love. There's this arrow, there's this action, there's this motion. It's not just this love, like this self-centered feeling. Love means action. All the examples of love Jesus showed us today had action attached to them. He didn't just say, I love you. He did it. Love in action, we saw that in the examples of the foster parents and the husband and wife. Those who are surprised by Jesus' love, those who fall in love with Jesus again and again, Jesus' love is amazing, unexpected, will learn to love others. I'm going to end with this. This last week, I was dumbfounded by the love some of our college students showed to me and our church. We were planning our next year of ministry together, which is a huge step for the campus ministry. that the students were doing it all themselves and getting really excited about the topics and the things they have in store. And at one point, we were talking about the strengths of our ministry. And these are their words, unsolicited, right? I just have to share them because this is very meaningful to all of us. The Stout students who attend worship and Bible studies here have said that they feel like St. Paul's is genuine. They like St. Paul's for being genuine. They say St. Paul's actually teaches out of the Bible and doesn't just say and believe what they feel like and are most comfortable with. They also say that St. Paul's does not judge people with a self-righteous attitude and rebukes out of love. This is only possible because we're connected to Jesus the vine. We learn love from him. To the degree that we're connected to him, this will be more and more the experience of our church, for college students, for anyone. Be connected by the love of Jesus. Amen.